He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, guys, it is Victory Wednesday. We are happy for our boy Cory Spartacus Booker here on the Marlow Show. He's engaged, and he is definitely straight. He's the straightest guy in the Senate. He really is. And he's just living the dream. You know, it's interesting because Booker does dodge all the gay rumors, and this is not an outing show. It's not an outing podcast. We're not here to out the gays. We only have the best gays at the Marlow Show, lots of them. But I will say that if you're trying to prove that you are not gay, then you wouldn't be this enthusiastic with your engagement photos. I'm just saying, I don't have a single photo of myself looking half as enthusiastic as Cory Booker is for these things. So it's just a word to the wise. If you're trying to maintain some sort of level of I'm not just completely plastic politician, do not release this style of engagement photos. So you guys are free to get those online if you haven't seen them. Treat yourself to this. You will enjoy it. And hey, if you want to treat yourself to something, yesterday's show, emotional show on the Marlow Show, talking about how I could lose my favorite character, Jerry Nadler. Some of you are just so kind, sending me AI images of Nadler dipping the Frankfurter in front, standing up in front of an open fridge, swirling around in the mustard and just going straight down his gullet with it. And getting to, I think, talk about some of the most important things that we've ever witnessed from a congressman. Can you put down a 14-ounce ribeye, fries, Oreos at lunch every single day and be 4'11"? Nadler proved that you can, and he had a lot of longevity. So we celebrate him, we honor him, we commemorate him on yesterday's show. So that's all for you if you want to get it. Good show for you today. Katie Miller will be here. Some of you may have heard of Katie as Stephen Miller's wife, but she also worked for DOJ as a spokesperson for DOJ. She worked at the Department of Homeland Security in the first Trump administration. I just taped with her, and I will tell you she has got some tea to spill in that regard, which was really a blast to hear that. And she's got a new podcast out, and she's working hard, and I appreciate her. She has a lot of a pretty candid interview. And not as, I would say, not as a little more raw, I think, than you might be used to with some of my past guests. And that's a good thing. That's a compliment. So we'll have that for you momentarily. But before we dig into that, I do want to get into the non-hot dog and non-Cory Booker related news. And we'll start with what this devastating attack that President Trump unleashed on Tren de Aragua gang members. We've got, I think there were 11 total fatalities, but people who are trying to import all sorts of illicit drugs into our country. 11 Tren de Aragua terrorists is how they are branded, at least under the Aliens Enemies Act. This is a warning to traffickers, and it's a military strike that was surgical, that was perfect, as always. It's just completely perfect the way this was done. And this is something that I talked to Charlie Kirk about this a bit on his show, if you want some more of my thinking on it. But overall, I think Trump resetting America to focus on our own hemisphere is so great. We spent a lot of time focused on the Middle East, which, look, the Middle East is a perilous region, it's a fraught region, but there's also a lot of money to be made there for defense contractors, for people who do the cleanup operations like Halliburton. And that's part of why that was our focus, is just the reality with the military-industrial complex. China is, of course, our biggest geopolitical threat right now, but they're also encroaching into this region. They're encroaching into South America and Central America, and a lot of it is via the production of fentanyl and the drug trade, which China is absolutely intimately a part of. But we've allowed, because of our open border, these cartel industries where they are smuggling humans, drugs, weaponry, whatever it is, and though a lot of the weaponry goes the other direction, which creates all that sort of commerce as well. But there is so much illicit material that comes through our southern border, and these industries are going to die hard. They're not going to all go away at once. And when you've Tren de Aragua terrorists who are there with drugs and Trump takes them out surgically, this is just great, great news. And yet you still see a few people who are out there in our media who are trying to act like this is illegal, this was immoral, this was a bad idea to have done this. And to that, I summon our friend Greta Thunberg to respond.
How dare you?
That's right. That's my take on it. How dare you? How dare you interrupt? Okay, so I got some clips of this, and Misty, I can't see the clips differentiated, so if I need a mulligan here, you'll have to help me with it. But President Trump was asked about this by a reporter, and the reporter comes from the perspective that what Trump may have done is illegal. Missy, do you want to play the first one, the Trump one, for me, just so I don't mess it up? Why don't you just play it for me? They'll feel good when we do that.
Can you give us a sense of what the U.S. policy, or what you're trying to achieve with the aircraft carriers, or the boats, I should say, in near Venezuela, and also the boat that you mentioned yesterday where 11 people were killed? What was found on that boat, and why were the men killed instead of taken into
On the boat, you had massive amounts of drugs. We have tapes of them speaking. It was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. And everybody fully understands that. In fact, you see it. You see the bags of drugs all over the boat. And they were hit. Obviously, they won't be doing it again. And I think a lot of...
So I love Trump's explanation. We'll get the rest of it. But I can barely get past the question. Was the implication was maybe Trump had done something wrong. Maybe he did something illegal. Maybe he had done something where I wish a district court would have had time to intervene on behalf of the Tren de Aragua terrorist gang members. So that's where a lot of our media is still coming from, that premise. They haven't understood that we've moved on as a peoples, that you are allowed to do stuff as president. You don't just have to do nothing. So go on.
A lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape. They're going to say, let's not do this. We have to protect our country, and we're going to. Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country, many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They've gone. But Venezuela's been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country. They emptied out, you don't know this, but they emptied out their prisons in Venezuela, and they emptied them out into the United States of America. And that's part of the problem we have. We're getting them out. We're getting them out rapidly, but it's caused a tremendous problem. And Pete and all of the people that are working very hard to rectify the stupidity of the Biden administration, allowing these people to pour into our country with open borders. We are paying a big price as a country for the incompetence of the Biden administration.
Amazing. It's awesome stuff. And he's right about the prisons too. They're not sending their best. And just remember this, whenever you see illegal aliens getting rounded up and maybe you think this is the one where these guys are going to be saints, it's way more often we find out that they had criminal records maybe in their home country before they came here. And we learn that stuff all the time. And the benefit of the doubt needs to go with the president, and it does not go with the gang members, terrorists, the drug traffickers. And we just can't keep giving everyone due process. We're going to bring them in, and we're going to put our resources, put tax dollars into sorting all this stuff out on a legal standpoint when we have pretty much reason to believe that these are terrorist smuggling drugs. It is good to send a message to the public. We're sending a message that all of you went across America, there's a new sheriff in town, and he's willing to take quick, decisive action to take out the trash. Marco Rubio speaks to this.
The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. The President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison. And under President Trump, those days are over.
And it wasn't a one-off. Rubio says strikes like
he just Marco 2.0, just completely elite. Yeah, we're good there. I think that's enough. But that's elite Marco 2.0. He's just doing great. Janine Pirro's dove in now. This is our lead story currently at Breitbart News as I'm recording. Saying that the historic seizure of precursor chemicals exposes China cartel drug route. So she's saying it even goes beyond just the terrorists, that there's a China connection too. That's exactly where my brain went when I was on air with Charlie earlier, and he was talking about this. And I said, I can't stop thinking about China here. And I guess my hunch was correct, because Pirro's saying that's what it is. It's not just about these narco-terrorists, it's about Trump as well. And just know that the left, if they want to continue to go against the side of law and order, if they want to start trying to defend the due process rights of illegal alien terrorists who are trying to smuggle fentanyl into our country, I don't think that's going to go well in what's shaping up to be perhaps a law and order election. The Fifth Circuit, which is typically not one of the worst, blocks Trump's use of the Aliens Enemies Act for deportation again. This will never stop. That's why it's so important to understand the lawfare superstructure, because this is the resistance to Trump at this time. There are options to fix it. I will do a show where I go through some my recommendations in terms of solutions, in terms of how we can get ourselves out of the lawfare mess that we're in. But that's not going to be today's show. But this is I think it was a 3-person panel, 2-1, 2 of the 3 judges saying a country is encouraging its residents and citizens to enter the country illegally is not the modern day equivalent of sending an armed or organized force to occupy, to disrupt, or to otherwise harm the United States. So basically saying Aliens Enemies Act does not apply to garden variety deportations. And that's just, they keep coming up with excuses to allow for the illegal aliens into the country. Maybe that's a good excuse. I don't know. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I will say it does feel like we keep trying to go out of our way to bend over backwards to protect the criminals, the terrorists, the illegal aliens, etc. So, okay, and why not? Considering some of the crimes that we're witnessing, apparently from Democrats in Pennsylvania, a Democrat county commissioner was arrested in a major drug bust. So that was something that we've got for you. A report at Breitbart News in Lehigh County. The district attorney Gavin Holohan was announced that during a large-scale bust, that Lehigh County Commissioner Zachary Cole Borghi was one of 22 people who had been arrested in the investigation. So he'd since been released on $50,000 bail. There were more than 2,000 pounds of marijuana and large quantities of cocaine and MDMA pills. So there's just a lot of people. I'm noticing this personality trait. By the way, what is MDMA? What is this? What do we call this? What's the ecstasy or Molly? They call it Molly now. So ecstasy. So he's got ecstasy pills there. Is that still in? It's the I feel like that's frowned upon now. Maybe it's in. I don't know. I'm not in the drug game. It's the I think a couple of adult beverages is about as far as my interest go in that realm. Okay. Anyway, I don't need to have a drug digression. My point is that I'm finding that I think a lot of the people who are inclined to try to get elected and serve as elected officials are really adjacent personality-wise to criminals. And there are just too many examples of this. The latest one is the one we brought up yesterday, which I was flippant about it, but it really is absolutely outrageous that Ilhan Omar somehow figures out a way to make $30 million. I mean, she makes as much money as Steph Curry in order to be in Congress. How'd she figure that out? She makes $30 million in a year. They can't be legal. And if it is, it shouldn't be. So that's what's going on over there. And then you're seeing the politicians wrapped up in stuff like this drug bust in Pennsylvania. And then now we're also hearing that Lisa Cook, the embattled Fed governor, who is supposed to have a term until 2038 or something, she has now 3 homes, and one of them she was renting out her primary residence. So none of this is in the paperwork. So none of this is what she's been open about. So Bill Pulte, who is the director of federal housing, has made a second criminal referral saying, if you're going to be in charge of the Federal Reserve, damn, you better sure know how to fill out a mortgage application. So it's a good point. It's a pretty good point. Pretty simple. So that's what I'm saying, is that it does feel like a lot of the people who are elected are really there because they know the system well, and criminals know the system well because that's how they know how to go up against the edge of the laws and know how much vulnerability they're in. This is another phenomenon out here in LA where they've got the Gascon specials, where the criminals know exactly how much they can steal and be able to, thanks to rules put in place by George Gascon, to be back on the street that day. So they know exactly what they can get away with. Maybe if they get caught, maybe they'll have a court date down the road, but so they at least get released immediately and they know exactly what to do there. And that's a Gascon special. So the criminals end up knowing the law as well as anyone but the lawyers, maybe even better in some cases. So dark stuff, but it's important. Speaking of California, wildfires have destroyed a historic California town. This is, I think, dates all the way back to the gold rush here, which is sad to see this. This is several buildings in the historic gold rush town of Chinese Camp. That's what it's called. Been destroyed in fire, multiple blazes in the Mother Lode region. Don't know exactly where that is. But anyway, just another historic California fire. That was from reporting from the San Francisco Chronicle there. But Newsom campaigning for president, being a professional smartass online. Recall last week that he made fun of children for praying while they were getting murdered and shot at. So he did that from his Twitter account. In the meantime, we're seeing more devastating fires destroy parts of the state that he's supposed to be in charge of. Because remember, the goal of being governor of a state, particularly a big state with the fourth largest economy in the world, whatever we say about California, is actually to be the governor of the state. And then if you do such a good job, you get promoted to president, fine. But the goal should not just be use my state as a stepping stone for your broader ambitions. So like the narcissism in some of these people is just out of this world. Newsom's obviously got it, but it is quite striking here. Do we have the Pritzker clip teed up? Yeah. Okay. I want to play this Pritzker clip, and then I will opine on it. Roll this for me, Misty.
This is an aim of this government. They don't actually care if you're here and undocumented. They just care if your skin color is a little off of theirs, and that you're Latino. They're going to just target you without knowing anything. By the way, does anybody in this room walk around with citizenship papers? I mean, really, none of us have citizenship papers on us.
So I'll tell you, that's what Newsom's main competition is, a Nepo baby Huey out there in Misty's home state of Illinois. But not for long, though. Misty's going to get out, so good for her. But this is what's happening here. This is why Newsom thinks he's got it, because Trump's focused on Pritzker. Pritzker seems like he's emerging as the other most viral, I guess, potential candidate. But Kamala's going to get in there with her book. She's going to be running for president. She's going to be at least testing the water with her book tour in her jammies. That jammy video is still freaking me out that I played last week on Kamala. But my point is on Pritzker is that he's got nothing. And so he's trying to, again, get in the way of Trump trying to deport criminal bad guys with just horrible arguments. Because when you're a Nepo baby and you inherit a bunch of money and you're in a blue state and you're a blue state governor, you're not always challenged. So him saying that, well, do you walk around with your papers? Well, first of all, the issue isn't their papers. The issue is their actual status. Are they here legally? And the answer is no. It doesn't matter if you have papers or not. And if the answer is yes, it doesn't matter if you have papers or not. But I'll tell you, I walk around with a little something called driver's license all the time. And so if anyone asks me where I'm from, I can show them my real ID California driver's license, and they will know exactly where I'm at and that I'm here legit. And if you're someone with a temporary protected status, then you're probably wise to carry evidence of that with you while you walk around. So yes, I think people really should do that. So I think that's a really important point. But the main point here is not that. It's what is latent here, which is that we have a Democrat Party that does not want to see illegal alien laws enforced. And we have a Trump administration that's been so careful that they are not deporting citizens. They are not deporting people of a legit right to be here. They even acknowledged it was a clerical error when Saint Abrego Garcia got deported originally. Even though he wasn't El Salvadorian, he is an illegal alien, he is clearly a criminal. And they still kind of said, yeah, I think he got wrapped up in it. He wasn't supposed to be in this dragnet this time. But, he's still gone. But they even acknowledged that, hey, yeah, this wasn't typically how we do things. And we probably won't make an effort to do it like this again. But he's still a bad guy. So he's going to stay gone, and that's how it's going to go. They have no ability to reason through how to message in this regard. And let's see if they improve. That's what I'm tracking. Can you improve beyond whatever that talking point was from Nepo Baby Huey? Can we play one more time? I just want to hear one more, just so people understand how thin this is.
This is an aim of this government. They don't actually care if you're here and undocumented. They just care if your skin color is a little off of theirs, and that you're Latino. They're going to just target you without knowing anything. By the way, does anybody in this room walk around with citizenship papers? I mean, really, none of us have citizenship papers
I'm
on
playing
us.
Too cool. It's so outrageous. You guys have your driver. I got my driver's license. I can see it from where I'm sitting right now, and I'm by myself in my office. What was he talking about? Just completely nuts. And maybe they don't have a driver's license. Well, maybe they should. Maybe they should get a driver's license. because you can get driver's license if you're an illegal alien in this country for the most part. He's wearing all the fabric in all of Illinois, by the way. And I'm just going to keep roasting him for it because he's not a healthy guy. And everyone's talk about Trump's health. There's no evidence Trump has any problems with his health. And after the Biden stuff, where we all knew Biden was ill and they wouldn't tell us. And then they got a guy Pritzker's on the brink of death right now. You can't be 5,000 pounds and think that you should be able to be president. And he does. So he shouldn't be governor. He shouldn't be anything. So certainly shouldn't be part of the hotel universe. Should not be a hotelier. I think his family did not like his connection there. I gotta do a dive on the Hyatt Enterprise one day. Get the bottom of the Pritzker family. Okay, let me see here. One last one I want to bring up. Free speech related. And it's interesting because I was doing a little bit of a dive on this guy, Graham Linehan, who is a Irish comedian who claims he was detained over transgender tweets in London. And this was interesting to me because I had recalled that this guy was a bad guy. He was not one of our guys, someone I think I don't like. And that was ringing a bell to me. And I talked about this a bit in my Breitbart Confidential show about how I don't think I trust this guy because he hates Breitbart. And that's what I was reminded of. But apparently, and I was corrected by Kurt Zindulka, who's one of our reporters over there, that he's had a big conversion. He was a big lefty, and now he got canceled for his trans jokes a few years back, and it made him he came back around, and so now he's had this big conservative conversion. Apparently, he's given us some interviews at Breitbart, which, forgive me, I must have missed those, which is shocking, but it's possible. And so now he's a really big deal in the UK and Ireland. He's very hot right now, and he got detained apparently for trans tweets. And this is how the leader of the Green Party discussed it on the BBC. Check this out. Missy, can you roll this one?
According to Graham Linehan, because the only thing the police have said is that they've acknowledged a man was arrested on suspicion of inciting violence. That's why the police say they turned up. What's your view, Mr. Polanski?
These are totally unacceptable tweets, and I accept that people who are in politics, we get lots of abuse.
These are unacceptable tweets. Unacceptable. What does that mean, an unacceptable tweet? You know how much horrible stuff I see in my feed that I wish I didn't have to see every day? I wish it just would wash over me. But this is why you have to have free speech. You have to be pretty absolutist about it because you get people saying that trans jokes are unacceptable. What's the definition of unacceptable? And, of course, there's no follow-up question. What is your definition of unacceptable? Green Party leader. Continue.
Lots of abuse, but let's also face we shouldn't get abuse. And I certainly recognise that women get more abuse than I do. For instance, I get a lot of
abuse. This is a term of art. This is not something that is. His definition of abuse is maybe something that just bothered him for 10 seconds. Continue.
Anti-Semitic abuse. Yeah. I'm one of a few Jewish leaders that have been in British politics. Today, a Muslim man was elected as my deputy leader, Mohsen Ali. I've seen the amount of Islamophobia he gets. We also know that for all of those groups, trans people have been in the sights of the nastiness and the toxicity for a long time. Now, I accept proportionality of police response is a conversation we need to have.
But do you think this was proportionate?
I think it was proportionate to arrest him. I think there's a pattern here.
5 armed police officers turning up.
Well, that's the bit that I don't understand why.
The BBC host comes in there and says there are 5 armed police officers. Seems like a lot for a comedian, and this guy's defending it. Go on.
Why they were armed, and again, I'd need to hear about the police response.
And why there were 5, presumably.
For sure.
Yeah, even he's got a bit. Yeah, I guess if you think about it, it really doesn't make sense. And those of you who missed the visuals there's the trans colors in the background. So that was flagged for me by my friend Andrew Wilkow on SiriusXM, saying that is peak woke. It really is. That's as woke as it gets. You get a guy out there, he's presumably a cis hetero white, who's out there. I don't know if he's hetero. I don't know, but he's certainly cis and white, saying that, yeah, it's really great to arrest these people on behalf of the trans because the trans are so weak that they can't handle jokes. Do you understand the condescension to the trans? That's the case. So, all right, I thought of one other news story for all of you before we bring in Katie Miller. And that's one that I'll only mention briefly because I'd forgotten about it. And I was just checking X, the Everything app, while that clip was open, so I could see the clip. And I noticed I hadn't even brought up the Epstein stuff. So a bunch of big trove of Epstein documents were released. As far as I could tell, there wasn't anything new in them. And maybe there is. I think there's an extra minute of video footage that was not a big deal, apparently. Then there was a bunch of the alleged victims who were Epstein victims had a press conference, and some politicians spoke at them. Nancy Mace apparently ran around Washington crying because the Epstein victims triggered some thoughts of a past abuse she's gone through, and that's where we're at. Nothing. And so we continue to drag out this news cycle, and it's going nowhere for people, and it's frustrating, but I'm very interested in that it's not dominating my whole feed. It is not something that it feels like everyone is. I think people have given up to some degree. That's deeply unfortunate, but there is a silver lining in it, in the sense that I don't know. I'm just completely unconvinced we're going to get good answers to this. I was unconvinced for a long time ago, and thanks to people in particular, my friend Mike Cernovich, who really, I think, revived this news cycle back from the dead. Had to be 6-7 years ago. There's a dead news cycle, and then it got brought back up, and then it became a big obsession for people, and we are not seeing satisfying answers. I hope we do one day, but it just feels impossible. It just becomes one of these things. Those of you who've been with me for a while, a good corollary would be the Durham Report, when it was just a lot of my favorite shows were just nonstop. We're getting the Durham Report. Durham's going to bring the receipts. Durham's bringing the heat. Durham's going to get the arrests. And then the Durham Report would never come out, and just we would wait for the Durham Report. And this is all the Russia collusion stuff. So waiting for Durham. And then finally we got Durham, and it was pretty good, but nothing really happened. And I don't even remember exactly the timeline of when it happened, but I know we waited forever, and nothing really big ever happened from it. And after a couple of years, I was going like, what are we doing here waiting for Durham? And that's where I'm at with the Epstein stuff. So it's just, I hope one day we'll have a full accounting of all the bad stuff, but it seems really far off. And I think it's curious that yesterday was supposed to be a big release of Epstein stuff. We didn't really get it. And is anyone's lives any different? I don't think so. So, all right, there you go. That's it for now. Let's bring in the one and only Katie Miller. All right, good coffee is easy to find, but great coffee, that is much harder to discover. And when I was introduced to Crockett Coffee, I knew this was special. It's roasted to perfection in small batches by experts who love the taste of great coffee, and I love the taste of great coffee. I'm really precise with it. I got a nice espresso machine. I get the scales out. I try to do it right, and this coffee justifies the effort. I feel like a Western settler when I drink it, and also I feel like a tired blogger who needs to, get revved up to do some podcasting. Whatever you are, it fits your lifestyle as well, because they got the K-Cups, they got the decaf, they got the light roast, dark roast, they got a mushroom organic blend. I'm a dark roast guy, but the others are great as well. And plus, these are good people. It's not just about the beans, which are great, but also they give back to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, showing that they never forget. And we like these guys, Buck Sexton, Clay Travis, great broadcasters, good friends as well. So it's good to support them because they fight for freedom when they're not making coffee. My first name, Alex, gets you 20% off at checkout. You go to crockettcoffee.com, crockettcoffee.com, 20% off at checkout with the code Alex. All right, new guest to the show, Katie Miller is here, half of Donald Trump's favorite young MAGA power couple. Katie's got a new podcast, Katie Miller Show, or the Katie Miller Podcast. She can't decide what the branding is. I get the same issue on my show. I think I've been calling it the Alex Marlow Show more, but Alex Marlow Podcast works. Wherever you get your shows, wherever you get your pods, and she's off to a hot start. She's had some great guests. So far, she's the Airbnb CEO. She had J.D. Vance already, Mike Tyson. So kind of a wild and eclectic guest list, which I enjoy. And Katie, it's nice to meet you. I don't know if you know this, but I know your husband, Stephen, for more than half my life. We're mostly kind of ships in the night acquaintances, but we've lined up on a bunch of stuff over the years because we both come from the same area, and I think we're steep in the same content growing up, namely Larry Elder's radio show. But were you aware of that I had a long connection to Stephen?
I do know that. I do know because he still remembers his time, and every so often we roll back and he mentions that he knows you for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's always kind of blew me away with his brain power, and I always found it very inspiring because it's sometimes you feel like you need to be given permission to do certain things in life, and then there's Steven out there who's just on the radio like every week, and he's 16 years old and he's just on radio. I'm like, well, how is this possible? How is anyone doing this? I thought you have to be at least 40 to have a PhD to get on radio. Like, apparently not.
No, you can just do things. And Stephen's been just, quote, doing things since he's been 16 years old. It's somewhere sitting to my left or my right are like DVDs or CDs he's cut from over time. It's just like piles and piles and piles of every single radio or TV show he's ever done.
Yeah, and I promise you I will not make the whole interview about Stephen, even though I'm sure that happens to you a lot when you do these things. But I have to ask, well, where did you guys meet? Where did you guys, tell me about a little of your story.
To be fair, I don't think I've ever done like our love story yet for anybody publicly. So this is quite a fun one. But Stephen and I met. I was at Homeland Security. I was the chief immigration spokesperson in President Trump's first term. When Kirstjen Nielsen was secretary, Elaine Duke, we rolled through a few in the first term at Homeland Security. But I was the chief spokesperson when we shut down the border to build the wall.
Yes.
And so as luck would have it, or whatever you want to call it, Stephen and I were in many, many meetings together talking about securing our border. And where does all true love happen is over border security. And so Stephen and I had met in the Roosevelt Room of all places in the West Wing. And then it was actually, I think it was Matt Boyle's show. It was the first radio interview I had ever done, and wanted to coach me through it and give me the right talking points. And so our first ever conversation, just one-on-one, was him giving me border talking points for Matt Boyle's show.
Unbelievable. What a great first date. That is so cool. It's funny. I have, and then but you're a pro in it. So my wife taught me biology, and I like to point this out because it's actually not an ironic joke. It's not some sort of a gross comment, but she tutored me in biology, and I was never good at science. So I didn't use any of the tutoring. Ultimately, she did. She went on to use the science. But that is very cool, because when AOC was crying at the border wall or the cages that Obama had built, and she was down there crying at those. And that was supposed to make Stephen feel really bad. He was actually fighting his wife at the time, over this stuff.
That's exactly, we literally, it's not that we fell in love during any of that, but that was the time and period in which we were both focused intently on securing our border and ensuring that no illegal aliens crossed the border. And was our first dates.
Amazing. So you probably had to build up a lot of rhinoceros skin right away, which is, I think, probably, unfortunately, I wish it was just, great brain power and competence. But it does feel like rhino skin is the number one hottest commodity now in modern Washington. You just have to be otherworldly tough because people just say horrible stuff about you constantly. So if you're in charge of messaging Trump's border policy in the first administration, this is back when the media still had some power. What was life like then?
It was really tough in that you would say the sky is blue and they would say, no, it's purple and you're lying and I'm going to
And it's illegal. It's illegal for you to have said it's blue.
Pinocchios at the Washington Post were the biggest deal in the world, and I would get 4 Pinocchios every week, and I was like, this is terrible. But I knew we were telling the truth. I knew we were doing the right thing. I knew we were doing the right thing for the country. And that's what kept me going. And I was working 14, 15-hour days, literally talking to every reporter, no matter how liberal you were or how much in the legacy media you were. I spent my time on the phone pushing what we were doing as the right thing each and every single day. And so now I'll get asked about Stephen a lot, and I'll get asked a lot about immigration policy. And I'll tell Stephen hey, by the way, I got asked about XYZ policy. And he's like, well, how'd you do? And I was like, better than you would have done. I know more about immigration than you. And it's a very funny relationship we have in that, his life's passion, also, that's how we met, which I think is why we work so well together.
Yeah, and it's such an important thing, just to speak personally for a second, about how, speaking of rhinoceros skin, those of us who grew up in LA and watched LA get destroyed by illegal immigration, and then just had the entirety of the media, the entirety of the political establishment tell us it wasn't happening when it was obviously observably happening, and you did not have to be a genius to figure it out. And Stephen was out there on the front line saying, no, it's really happening. Everything is getting ruined, and there's going to be long-term consequences if we don't rein this in. And then you're just called all sorts of names. I mean, he's been called the worst names of anyone I've ever seen, and the entire book's been written just to smear him. And I just find that to be just hopefully it gets old at some point. But tell me a little bit about, because you guys are really busy. So what's life like? Because you have a bunch of children, correct? Or
I do. We had, so just briefly for your audience who don't know me, I was at Homeland Security. I'd worked for a couple senators, Republicans on the Hill. And then I was communications director to the vice president in the first administration. Then we left office. My daughter was born 2 weeks after the 2020 election. I had 3 kids in 4 years. And then I was an advisor to Elon at Doge in President Trump's second term. And I will tell you this, is our home life is just as normal as everyone else's is, except for the fact that, Stephen goes to work in the White House and my kids know President Trump is someone who we love and respect. And they say, Mommy, can we go see President Trump today? Can we go to the White House to have lunch with Daddy? And I think to myself often, if only they understood what they were saying, but they're 4, 3, and my son turns 2 on Sunday, they don't understand. And so we actually took our kids to the monuments this weekend, which we haven't done ever because DC has been so unsafe. There's been a ton of carjackings. I had one pulled on me in DC years ago. And so we finally took the kids and we showed them, the Lincoln Monument. And my daughter's like, who's president? Who's Lincoln, Mommy? And I said, he's a president just like President Trump. She goes, there's more presidents? And, she just thinks of it as a man, not necessarily the office. And Stephen is someone where we prioritize healthy family, happy family, which is dinner together as a family at 5:30. Bedtime and bath time, Stephen or I try to be home every night to put them to get bed, whether that's one of us or both of us, typically both of us. But he makes an effort to not schedule anything during that precious family time because I believe to raise conservative children and to be raised happy, healthy children in today's society where there's so many pressures to trans our kids and to raise radicalized children that become crazy liberals who dye their hair purple and blue. Our kids, we put a priority on being home with them and hear what's on their mind.
Yeah, I think that's really big. For me, it's that sort of 5 or 5:30 to 8 or 8:30 window. That's always the most kind of important time because it could be really chaotic if things are not organized. So I really do my best and not of anything then. If I can avoid it, I think that's the move. Because you always go back to it. I have to go to bed. So if you got to get stuff done.
JD actually, the vice president said that on my podcast. The first episode was what is his typical, day like after work? And he had said that, he's home with his family, puts his kids to bed, and then he's back online, after the kids are in bed. And I think that is, if the vice president can do that, every dad across the country can, take a couple hour time out as much as they can to be there for their kids.
So you've had some interesting bosses. Kirsten Nielsen, that's a blast from the past. What was she like to work with? Because she was someone who she was, I would say we gave her a hard time at Breitbart at the time.
I would say she deserved it.
Opine on this. Go ahead.
No, I would say the greatest thing about President Trump's second term is that the cabinet actually likes working for him. They like working together. And oftentimes at night, what I've seen in my own household and with, these members of the cabinet is that they truly do have America's best interest at heart and have President Trump's back, where they will work to find solutions and actually push the agenda forward. In the first term, Kirsten would get a call and she would either sit on it, not know what to do, fumble the ball, have so much anxiety about what others might say about her that when you're hated by both the left and the right, there's nowhere for you to go. And we see that now, right? Like, where is she now? I honestly don't know that answer. And that she was also incredibly difficult to work for. I mean, look who she raised underneath her, Miles Taylor, who was anonymous, who has done nothing but monetize his hatred of President Trump.
That's right.
Olivia Troy also, same as well, came from DHS.
Wow, a really interesting point. So first of all, a couple things there. First of all, you pronounced the J, so it's Kirsten. So we've all just been pronouncing it wrong for all this time. So
I don't know. I pronounced the J a little bit there.
God, that's so interesting because I've always been obsessed with the J. It's just, what is that doing in that name? But you said something that was very important that I want to key in on. You said that the best part about the new administration is that everyone is working for President Trump. The implication there is that she was working against President Trump or was there to resist President Trump. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell me what
I think there's a difference between active resistance and then when you sit on your hands.
Yeah.
I think there are people who are scared to do big, bold things for transformative change. President Trump is a transformative president who has done nothing but put the interest of Americans first. And that means going against what is considered the norm or what the liberals want to tell you is the norm in this country, the loudest, voices, the legacy media who wants to set policy for the rest of our country, which is a shame and embarrassing that we allow that to happen. But she was someone who got stifled by fear and stifled by the fear of doing something great. And so is that active resistance or is just that passive resistance? I honestly don't think it matters. I think you saw within days of President Trump taking office in the second term, they said you just don't need new laws, you need a new president. The same laws were on the books in the first term. We knew how to do it. Just certain people didn't do it.
Really, really interesting. Did you get to know Miles Taylor at all?
I did know Miles, yes.
What was that like?
I believe Miles is the one who actively tried to undermine my relationship with my now husband.
Wow.
I caught him leaking
Yeah.
in the first administration. I knew he did. I knew exactly what he leaked to an NBC reporter. And at the time they said, oh, well.
Wow. Yeah, he has always been striking to me because the level of narcissism in Washington is very high. I mean, almost everyone's got a dusting of it, and his just seemed to still be at a new level where he was a kind of a low mid-level guy and was walking around DC as if he was a cabinet secretary, the way he held himself. And I just found that to be, I have way too much humility to do that for a weekend, and he's been doing it for years and a decade now.
He definitely suffers from revisionist history. There are things he says that happen that just don't happen, that never happened, that he was never privy to. But that's the way the world works, right? We have this in our private lives all the time, is that you see on X someone say, oh, I confronted Stephen Miller. He was out with his kids. And it's like, you didn't. People make up fascinations in their mind to serve their own purpose when it doesn't happen.
So I've actually, now you mentioned that, I know we've covered a Breitbart sometimes in the past where Stephen's been harassed going out in town. Are you guys able to go out and live a somewhat normal life, or is it just harassment all the time?
I don't want to say it's harassment all the time, but it certainly isn't what I would consider living like anyone else gets to do here in, the DC area. We've recently had flyers put up with, my husband's face with our real home address, which is a felony. So the police, which I thank our local police for looking into it, and Secret Service and taking those type of threats very seriously. But on the flip side of it is that I'm not sad. I'm not upset by any of that. To me, that is the cost of being able to create radical, lasting change that makes our country better for my children and for your children and for your listeners' children for years to come. And people can cry from the cheap seats all they want. But, we worked, for 4 straight years from 2020 to 2024 to have President Trump back in office, to be able to make DC safe again, to be able to stop illegal immigration, to be able to lower the cost of energy prices and gas prices, and truly create this transformative change. And so, too bad, so sad, keep screaming.
Yeah, exactly. And that's got to be the approach. You've got to take the approach that you got to just embrace it and feel like it's because you guys stand for something and you have a lot of power. And that's not everyone has that. A lot of people are angry and jealous about that. And that's just going to be a fact. And so hopefully things aren't, hopefully you guys can have some peace there because he's doing great work there and you're doing great work there as well. I got to talk about your next interesting boss, Elon Musk.
Yes.
Maybe second most powerful man in the world, maybe third most, maybe Xi Jinping, Elon and Trump. So and their relationship was just so frenetic and fascinating to watch. You had a front row seat. I guess my first question maybe could lead into wherever you want to take it, but is Elon Musk MAGA?
I don't know what you'd consider MAGA or not MAGA. I can only say what I see publicly, which is Elon is very much aligned with a lot of our missions, whether that be illegal immigration, lowering the cost of prices, ensuring affordable energy. And so I quite frankly, I haven't had the conversation with him what he defines himself as. But I know a lot of his missions very much align with that of President Trump's. And that's why he donated upwards of, I think it's $400 million. It's
a lot of money.
To elect President Trump. Yeah. A lot of money. And I know that's why he dedicated, 3 months, 4 months of his time. Maybe it's 5 months, full time to help President Trump, doing Doge. And to him, that comes at a great cost. I mean, look what happened to Tesla. Look what happened to many of the companies and his own reputation in the process.
So what is Doge up to now? Because this should be sort of Doge season now, because now we're coming up in appropriations time. And this is where a lot of the work that Doge did and is doing could get really cemented. So what's the state of Doge today?
I'm not sure the state of who's still there or what they're still working on day to day. I resigned from working from them, I think it was in May, around the same time that Elon had done so. But I know that Russ Vought over at OMB has taken upon a lot of those Doge cuts, formalizing them into pocket rescissions, I think I've seen publicly. Those PBS cuts were great. And a lot of the cuts that we were doing, I know that Russ has his eye on them. We've put them into a spreadsheet, and I know he's working through that with the president to effectuate them.
So give me a sense of a day working for Elon Musk, because I got to tell you, I've worked for some wild bosses. I work for Andrew Breitbart. I work for Steve Bannon. That still sounds intimidating.
I don't want to hurt his reputation here, but he is a great boss to work for. He really is. He's a great man. Every day was fun. There wasn't a day where I felt like my opinion wasn't valued or utilized. I can only speak to really when we were in the White House, is that he would come in every day and figure out how we can cut more costs and get the team energized. There was often meetings at that would start at 8 or 9 p.m. and go till 2 or 3 in the morning with the entire 100-person DOJ team across the federal government, where we would report in what people were working on, what they were finding, and how we can, better serve the American people.
Okay, so now you're in a new role, you're podcasting, you decide you want to take on a podcast. It's a very crowded medium. I just got into it less than a year ago. There's a lot of people here, a lot of people have stuff to say, but you got a very big Rolodex, you've got a unique voice. So tell me what made you think, you know what, I want to have a show, I want to be an interview show, I want to talk to interesting people. Who are you targeting with your audience? What do you feel like you're adding in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, as you mentioned, these days, everybody has a podcast. There isn't somebody I know who doesn't have a podcast these days. But what I found in working for, as you say, a lot of, men in political arena and outside is that, we saw in 2024, President Trump do what they said, the bro election, right? A lot of podcasts, Theo Vaughn, the Nelk Boys, Joe Rogan, all reaching this predominant male audience, center right, or conservative right. And there really wasn't that female audience. The only choice you had was call her daddy. And that doesn't align with my morals and my values. She has recent episodes on here's why I don't need a man, or here's why I'm waiting to have kids. I found in my own life that kids make my life better, richer, more full, and that my husband enhances my career, doesn't stifle it. We saw with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, for them, engagement is the culmination of their adult lives, not the beginning. And I think we should be encouraging more women to be beginning their adult lives with relationships and with marriage and with children, because I find it really does enhance your career. Women for so many years were told that if you have kids and you take maternity leave, you have this gap in your resume that you can never overcome, and you can never be the CEO. You can never rise to the top. And my own career has proven that that's just fundamentally not true.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and I think you're wise on this point, because I was on talk radio for a long time, and a lot of the talk radio audience is women, because they don't work necessarily in a job that wouldn't allow for them to listen to stuff. So either they don't all work a full schedule, or they are working a job where they can have the radio on. And it just feels like a lot of my callers were women over the years. And a lot of the podcast marketing, I don't even think it's genuine for the most part, but all of these podcast people do a lot of caricatures of male archetypes. And it's fun, and it's a pushback against all of the wokeification of everything. And I think the over-feminization of a lot of parts of society. But it does feel like every other podcast is just bros being bros. And then there's, two breakout female podcasts, and one of them is hosted by someone who invented a blowjob technique. I mean, it just seems more limited there. It does seem like there's a big space.
And I don't want to say that there aren't female conservative podcasters. Of course there are, right? You have Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Tommy Lahren, Brett Cooper. I can continue, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
But they all are talking about politics and having heavy political conversations. I'm not interested in doing that. I want to have these relatable conversations that delve into people's life. What is it like to be them? How do we share similar struggles and similar lives, even though we do different things and live in different parts of the country? What really spurred that was my own life, right? So many people want to know, how was I doing, or what was I going through? And I'm like, the same thing as you every day. My kids are crying at bath time. I'm figuring out what to cook for dinner.
Right.
Not enough hours in the day. My kid wants 3 books at bedtime instead of 2. And, I think Instagram and TikTok are so curated for that 1 minute that it's, what is that only does the rest of real life look like for somebody?
Well, this is where my objection to some of the bro podcasts are. It's not that I don't understand it from a business perspective, and I like some of the content on some of these podcasts, but I mean, a lot of them just, the morning routine, I get up and I get grounded into the earth by standing on grass with my feet, and then I eat a grass-fed bison patty, and then I do 4 hours of exercise and 3 hours of cold plunge, and then I do 15 minutes of email. And it's like, yeah, but you don't have kids. Like, you don't have you're not working an East Coast job from the West Coast. Like, I want to hear some real life challenges, and not just here's how I dialed in my routine for optimal productivity as a childless 35-year-old guy. And it's just like, I don't. There's other stuff to talk about beyond morning routine.
And so the guests on my podcast have been everyone from Vice President Vance to Katie Boyd Britt, the youngest female senator. Mike Tyson is my next episode, releasing next Monday. We had the co-founder of Airbnb, Joe Gebbia. And future episodes will run the gamut from women CEOs to male, because I believe women's issues aren't just sex and periods and menopause and all that like random female stuff that they want to push on you as a woman. Like, my brain can do more than just like, women's issues. My brain is, what do we want to talk about in society through a lens of a female? Because those conversations are just a little bit different.
So what's your reaction with some of the conversation now, some of the trad culture online, which is, I think a lot of this is performative as well. I think it's a path for some people, but but a lot of families, like, for example, I'll just be up front here, is that I do incredibly well in my career, but my wife is a professional. She's a physician, and she is now contributing in a great deal to the house, and it does make life a little easier for me. And it's nice that, and she's in a feminine job. She is nurturing the community cancer patients. I mean, so that's. But it doesn't involve her being in the house the whole time. I think that's great, and I encourage her, and I'm not shy about saying it. It's not negative. I'm 100% convinced it's a positive in my life, at least. But you would feel some judgment to people online. Well, she leaves the home and she's got to go work, and it's just, yeah, but it's also great too. So don't tell me it's not.
For conservatives, I think for so long we've bucketed into like that. Conservatives believe that women should stay home and raise the children, right? And I do believe, to be clear, in traditional gender roles, I believe it is my role to raise our children, to parent our children. Not that Stephen doesn't, but that it is, I deal with the menu, I deal with what needs to be done around the household. That's not the best use of his brain power. His brain would take 2 or 3 times the compute as my brain would do to do the same thing. Does that mean I don't have a full-time working job, sometimes inside the household or outside the household? No, of course. And Stephen's incredibly proud of me, just the same way you are of your wife.
Yeah.
But, I always say to each their own. If that's what works in their household, and that woman to stay home and raise her 6, 9 kids or 2 kids, and she wants to clean her house and make dinner, hats off to you. So proud of you. I mentally could not do that. I need to sometimes just, my brain wants to sit here on a podcast with you and perform and do a podcast for myself. And I like doing, other things. Does that mean I'm a less of a parent to my children? No, my daughter right now is upstairs sleeping. My 2 kids are upstairs sleeping. I'm doing this during nap time. And, I'm not shy about saying that sometimes I have help around the house, because that's what I need to feel good. And that makes my marriage work and my kids work and all of that.
So here's where, for me, and I want to add something that I think will resonate with you. For me, I think that there's a lot. It's good to have philosophies, and it's good to have, I don't want to say dogmas, but it's good to have first principles that you look at, and you start from that premise. And the premise that there are traditional gender roles. We want masculine men, we want feminine women. I think we start there. But then you can make it individual. And I'm libertarian in this regard. I think there are different pathways for different people. My wife she does need to work. She's got a scientifically wired brain. She likes doing science. She absorbs it quickly. She speaks the language of it. But she's not a girl boss. I don't think she wants to run a big company. Like, she's not wired that way either. So she doesn't want to go out there and, be the CEO of something or be the editor in chief of something. But she does want to use her brain to give back for the gift that she has. And I don't think she would do well being in the home all day, every day. I don't think she'd be happy that way. And then that's not going to make me happy. If I come home and she's not happy, like that's not going to work. And I don't want to sit in a cubicle. And a lot of journalists can write amazing stories in a bullpen where they can just type and there's all this cacophony. I can't do that. So that's not me either. So why can't we have a little bit of a personalized thing? And I feel like there's a lot of place to discuss this, and it's not really, I can't think of where to go to discuss it though. So maybe you can provide some of that for us.
I would love to do that. That's kind of what I want to do on the podcast, is normalizing, at least in the conservative value set, what it looks like to be a parent and to become, if you want to become a boss, if you want to be the best doctor, you can be the best scientist. You can choose that path, but you can also choose to stay at home with your children if that's what works best for you and that's what makes you happy. Because in today's day and age, by the way, childcare is so expensive. And sometimes it is financially better for the family, for the woman to stay at home. And that's also okay. And I don't shame anybody for making different choices than myself. And I think we should be more supportive of what works for each family, so long as they're doing it as a family and raising good, productive members of society. Because our birth rate is dramatically falling in this country. We need to be encouraging more families to have kids. I think the worst thing that ever happened, honestly, was 16 and pregnant Dr. Drew telling all these women not to have sex, because we need to have more kids. Kids makes our country better. It certainly provides for us in the future. But the flip side of that is we shouldn't also live in a society where women are going to work that are non-productive roles that don't enhance society just because that is what women should be doing now. I don't know when we've made it majestic for a woman to work outside of the house instead of also being there for her kids, to leave for 12 hours and to make an income, that just gets you outside of the home, to me, isn't it either. Because to me, that doesn't create, happy, healthy children. And that's my ultimate goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could have this discussion without having, blanket one-size-fits-all solutions, which is that is the currency online, unfortunately, right now. And I think that there is a big space. So tell me about the format of the show. It seems like they've been running about an hour. There's a big debate that goes on. What's the ideal length? What are you trying to do to get people hooked on the show?
The advice I was given was just same time every day, be consistent, don't deviate, right? And so that's what I'm doing. I've understand that growth takes time. I shouldn't expect overnight success, nor do I. I expect this to be at least a years-long project in which I work every day to win the hearts and minds of who I want to be my audience and who I hope tunes in. I think some episodes will be shorter at 30 minutes. Some will be an hour. I'd hope they're an hour. I think longer than that, I don't have that time in the day. So I hope someone else doesn't have that time in the day. But I've also, a lot of people have asked me, what are you going to wear? Do you have a stylist? And I laugh at that. And I ask a lot of my female guests this is like, what are you doing for skincare? What are you doing for your clothes? Because oftentimes there isn't that person. There probably never is that person. And it's a lot of pressure on a woman versus a man to have your appearance ready on, where your image is blasted everywhere. And what does that feel like for you? And so in my own podcast, I've chosen to wear pretty much the same thing in every episode, because a real working mom or a real mom isn't taking the time to go shopping every 3 days. They're not taking time to, they're taking time to look good and look presentable. But it isn't this hours of online shopping and unlimited budgets. That's not realistic. What's realistic is I'm putting on my jeans and we're going to get our kids ready in the morning and we spend more time on our kids' clothes than we do ourselves.
I think there's got to be a backlash for this plastic online culture that we're all just being fed this just bogus image of what life is like. And it's just all phony. It's just every other person's an Instagram celebrity and they all look like they got this pristine life. And we all know it's not true. We all know it's all either AI or too much plastic
all the time.
Yeah, and people can't stop. So there's got to be a backlash. I'm ready for it. And so maybe you'll be a part of this, Katie. And so tell me about a favorite moment or two that you've had so far since recording.
Yesterday I was in New York recording with Dr. Kellyanne Petrucci, the founder of the bone broth diet. And we had the most fascinating conversation on fertility issues and her view on why women are having less kids, even when trying, what's causing the rise in infertility. I was blessed to be able to have 3 kids quickly, but not all of my friends are. So hearing her perspective has been great. Also, to me, the best moments, are I was on Fox and Friends yesterday morning, and Ainsley Earhart was kind enough to have me on. And it's truly that women supporting other women, which sounds so corny and trash sometimes and ick. Oftentimes women are each own's hardest critic. And so to have the support from other women of saying yes or helping me in when I've come to everybody, it's the most humbling thing in the world to ask for help and to not be able to do something yourself, which I take pride in doing things myself and figuring it out. Heavy boxes, lifting, moving, like I got it, right? But asking other people for help has been one of my greatest challenges, and having people help me has been one of my greatest joys. And I'm so thankful and grateful for that.
Well, you did a nice job with the marketing. It seems like you made a big splash. So it looks like you're asking the right people for help. So that's a good thing. And I'm wired the same way. It's whenever I have a book out, and now I do favors for people all the time. And then now is the time, once every 18 months, I got to go ask people, you got some time for me so I can come talk about it. It really is. It doesn't feel great, but I always do my best to make it worth people's while when they have me on their shows. But your point there is so important, because I'll tell you, Mrs. Dr. Marlow, who I don't talk about all that much on the show. I reference things from time to time, but I don't go in too deep about what she's like. And one thing that's super important to her, even though she's a conservative Christian woman, one thing that really matters to her that I think that she sees as not something that the right is good enough on is that I think that she wants women to support other women, and we get very competitive. And she's noticed this pattern where there's a lot of women who are not standing up for other women who deserve it. And she really hates that. So that's really off-putting to her when she sees that quality in other people. I think it's really, really important that we are not like that.
No, and one of the things that I've noticed going into this is that there really aren't a lot of women. I know everyone says, oh, there's a ton of women on Fox or a ton of women podcasters. There really isn't comparatively to the amount of men that are doing the similar thing. And there truly is a lane and a space for all women. I mean, if we're competing for the same audience share, we can do it. I mean, but look no further than Alex Cooper, right? There was an article, I think, yesterday about her Unwell Network and how every podcaster who's joined her Unwell Network has bombed and has done really poorly. And the article goes on to say, I don't know if it was on X or somewhere, goes on to say, is she cannibalizing the people who are signing on with her so she remains the top? It's why her and Alex Earl, I'm going to go deep on like women culture here, but it's why her and Alex Earl aren't friends anymore, is because they became too competitive. And yet they're two of the biggest names, but why aren't women nicer to each other is a time-old tale that high school girls can certainly talk to. And I had a terrible time in high school and middle school. I don't know a girl who hasn't, right? Because girls are mean and they do not support each other.
Yeah, interesting. Well, look, you got a lot to say, and I think this is a really exciting prospect. So I'm rooting for you. The Katie Miller Show, wherever you get your podcast. Do you have a favorite place for people to subscribe? Is there a best one?
I would say YouTube. I'm a big YouTube type of girl. I love the video.
Let me second that. Any of you in my audience who are not subscribed on my YouTube, I get a lot of the suits, the powers that be, like when the YouTube numbers are strong. So if you're not subscribed to my YouTube, go over there, subscribe to Katie, subscribe to mine. I think that's good. But it's easy to find. People can use their favorite search engine that's not Google and find it.
Yeah, this isn't like a hard thing. Like you can Google it. I'm on X, Katie Miller. I'm on Instagram, Katie Miller. It's all Katie Miller. Like it's not spelled funny. Like it's easy.
Easy to do. All right, Katie. Well, it's been nice to talk to you, and let's do this again sometime soon. That is today's show. Thanks to producer Misty and all of you in the audience. We'll talk to you tomorrow.